00109 Burgundy Boulevard, Dimondale, Michigan 48821. Bob's phone number is area code 517-646-6887. The recording was made at Bob's house on October 8th, 1990 by Jim Walkinshaw of the Oldsmobile History Center. This is tape number 1 of 2 tapes. Well, Bob, if you would just start with your name and your address and your phone number for us, please.
I'm Robert Scott. I live at 10109 Burgundy Boulevard, Dimondale.
What's your phone number?
646-6887.
Then if you would, Bob, just take us back to when you started at Olds and what you were doing.
Well, I hired in at Olds September 27th, 1935. And I started on the paint line, adjusting headlights.
On the car assembly line.
And from there, I went on the assembly line. And then the war come along.
Just a minute, stay back in 35. Where was the assembly line when you were doing that? Where were you working?
In building 19.
Okay. Was it a mechanical assembly line that the car rode down?
Yeah, it was the paint line, they called it, where they touched up paint and stuff.
All
It
right.
wasn't a regular assembly line.
Okay.
Assembly line was over in building 16.
All right. Which way was the conveyor going in that building?
One south.
So, was the headlight aim, was that the last thing they did?
Yeah,
or?
before they went to the warehouse. Yeah, and I did that for about a year and a half, I guess.
Where did you go after that year and a half?
Over on the regular assembly line, driving cars off the end of the line.
Okay. Where did you have to drive them to?
On the over to the test rolls. Okay. And then from there on, somebody else took them.
Okay. How many test rolls did we have, Bob?
Had 2 that worked.
Okay. And where were those? Do you remember where those?
That was between the assembly line and the paint line. Between building 16 and 19A.
And they were right down at the very south end of
Yeah.
Was your job to drive from the conveyor to the test roll and then walk back? Is that what you did?
No, we went there to the wheel alignment, front wheel alignment. They aligned the wheels where we stayed in the car. And then we took them off of there to the test rolls.
How was the alignment? Was that a pit in the floor?
Yep. Yep. There was a pit in the floor and 2 men on the top, one on each side. The man in the pit done the adjusting, and these other fellows done the reading of the.
There were a couple of gauges or something.
Yeah, alignment gauges.
And then you just stayed with the car.
Yeah. Then took it to the test rolls, which was just around the corner.
Okay. So you went through alignment and then the test rolls and then onto this paint line. Is that where it went?
Well, no. Went onto the hardware line then.
Oh. Okay.
That went north. And when they got through with all the stuff on there, well, then it went to the paint or the paint shop.
Do you remember how much you made when you hired in?
59 cents an hour.
59 cents. How many hours a day did you have to work?
8 most of the time.
8 hours.
Sometimes we had 10-hour days, but
okay. Let's see, was the union there at that point in time?
No.
When did that happen? Shortly thereafter?
Well, it really didn't happen real good till after 1947.
Okay.
That's when they had to sit down and strike a clinch, you know.
Yeah.
And then from then on, it was all union. Before that, it was kind of hit or miss. They didn't say if you don't join, you get fired or anything. You know? But if you got mad at the supervisor or something, then you join the union.
Okay. Did most people join or didn't
No.
they?
No, not even half of them at first.
Is that right?
No.
How did people, how did the foreman treat you as an employee at that point in time? How were the relationships there?
Mine was real good.
Everybody got along?
No, not everybody. Some people wouldn't get along with anybody.
I suppose that's true.
But if you was there and did your work, well, the supervisor was fine.
Do you remember who your boss was?
My first one?
Yeah.
Yeah, Leroy Flynn. He committed suicide here about 6 years ago.
And do you remember who the plant superintendent was?
Uh, no, not the big one, I don't. I know who the personnel director was.
Who was that?
Uh, I did know, but I can't think of his name.
Bob, how did you come to pick Oldsmobile to work at?
Well, I come up here from Ohio on vacation. And I was staying at my sister's house for a couple of weeks. And she wanted to go downtown one day to the A&P store where they're having a 10-cent sale, I guess. I walked into the store. The first guy I saw was the fellow that I worked with down the high in the A&P store when we was going to school. We worked part-time. I ran into him. He was the produce manager up here. His folks had moved up here when they got out of school. So I talked to him for quite a little while. My sister did her shopping, and so he wanted to know what I was doing. I told him I was just up here on a couple weeks vacation. He said, "Have you got a job?" I said, "No." He said, "Do you want one?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Well, let's go back and talk to the boss." So I went back and talked to Mr. Fowler. And so Pete told him what we'd done down the high at the NP. We used to take inventory. We used to decorate the windows on Saturday night and everything. And well, he says, "We're going to take inventory tonight. Would you like to help us?" I said, "Sure." So I went in that night and helped him take inventories Wednesday night. And so before I left, he said, "Would you like to come in tomorrow evening and bag potatoes and sugar?" I said, "Sure." So I went in and I worked Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday. He says, "You come in Saturday morning at 8 o'clock." He says, "I can use you." So I went in Saturday and worked as a regular clerk because he used to have to go and get the stuff and bring it to him. So before we got through that night, he said, "Come back here at the office a little bit." He said, "I'd like to talk to you." So I went back and talked a while, and he says, "Would you like to have a regular job here?" I said, "Sure, I need one." "Well," he says, "I'm going to put you on file." And he says, "If you can write to Ohio and get some recommendation," he says, "maybe I can put you on regular." I said, "Well, I can do that." So I called down to Ohio and asked him for a little letter. And about 3 days, he called me in the office one day and, "Well, Bob," he says, "I guess I'm not going to be able to use you." I says, "What?" "Well," he says, "I got the letter from uh, your supervisor, area supervisor down there today, and he says, I guess I just won't be able to use you." And so he started to laugh a little bit. I said, "Well, if you can't use me," I said, "I might as well go home, I guess." "Well," he says, "everybody's recommendation was as good as yours, so I wouldn't have to worry." He says, "You're on full time right now." So that's the way I started. I worked there about 2 years. And my sister lived next door to the superintendent of the paint over at the shop.
Okay.
And one day I was talking, well, I mowed his lawn for him a couple times. And one day I was talking to me, and he says, "How would you like to go to work at the Olds?" I said, boy, I'd like it if I could. Well, I said, you go and get your application and we'll see what we can do. So I went over and put my application in the next day, and I think about 3 or 4 days later, they called me in, give me a physical. They said, well, you go start to work Monday morning on the paint line. So that's the way I got in.
Where was the employment office when you came by? Was that in the administration building at that time?
Well, it wasn't there then. I guess it was over on, what's the street on the north side of the administration building?
Oldsmobile?
Yeah, I think that's where the entrance was to it.
During the period of the 30s, did you keep working fairly steadily, or did they have layoffs in that period?
In 1938, we was laid off for 10 months.
Wow. What happened?
Well, they had too many cars, I guess.
What did people do?
What'd they do?
Yeah.
I went to work in WPA.
Is that sort of what folks did?
I don't know what the others did. But I worked the A&P or the WPA for about 3 months, I guess. Then Mr. Jennings opened a restaurant on East Michigan Avenue, and I heard he was looking for help. So I went and talked to him. He says, could you do short order cooking? I said, you bet. I had worked in a restaurant a little down home, but I never cooked. But I watched him.
Yeah.
So he said, well, I think they can use you. So I worked for him until they called me back to the Olds in September, I think. And I worked 12 hours a night, 7 days a week for $25.
But it was a job.
Well, yeah. And I used to fry hamburgers all night. Now I can't even stand the looks of one.
I can't blame you if you looked at that. Well, then the plant called you back? Okay. And then where did you go back to work when you came back then?
In the actual plant for about a month. Then finally went back to my old job.
Where was the actual plant when you came back? There's some confusion on where it was at that time.
Well, I can't tell you the building 21.
It was up by the car assembly plant,
Yeah,
up on the hill there.
yeah. It was west of the car assembly plant.
Yeah.
Where you go in the plant protection on there. That was you went upstairs there and you was
Yeah.
right to the line.
Okay.
Building 21.
All right. And then you left, you stayed in the actual plant for a short period of time and went back to car assembly.
No, went to plating plant then,
Oh, the plating plant. Okay. Where was that, Bob?
right west of the action plant.
Okay, so
Building
so
78.
it was right where
Yeah,
it
or
was. So to
still
speak.
is.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. And I worked there till the war started, and then it was all over for a while. You know?
Yeah. What did you do in the plating plant?
Well, I did some welding. I did some plant loading and unloading, and
Okay.
some packaging, and then for about a year as a polisher.
Okay. Was the plating done with an automatic machine, or was it? Okay. It was all, they had some kind of an automatic plating machine.
Yeah, went up, transferred over, and went down the next
Okay.
tank. Stayed there, looked, transferred again.
That wasn't the plating machine that was there in the 50s, was it?
Yeah,
Stayed on, it was the same one.
yeah.
Okay. Where were the bumpers stamped at that time? Or made?
Over the press plant.
Okay. And did you plate things other than bumpers there?
No, just bumpers.
What happened after plating?
Well, then that's when the war started, and we
Okay.
went shut plating down, you know.
All right.
And then we went on road work till 1945, late 1945, and then we
Okay.
started plating up again.
Now, what did you do during the war then? What kinds of things?
I went
did you
on a
do?
supervision as well. I went over in the breach ring and worked there for a little while, and well, quite a little while. And I left there and went to the articulated rod
Okay.
over in Building 28.
Okay.
And I went over there as a supervisor under Del McRae. And worked there till the war business was done, and then we went back to plating. And he was my boss there too. And then I was made general foreman there and worked there for, well, until the new bumper plant started over plant 3. And when that started, why we went over there.
So back up a minute, if you would, Bob. When you were down in the articulating rod department, you had mentioned downstairs that you had gotten a suggestion award. Is that where that? What was that for?
For that bushing was on that articulated rod. One was uh, a nickel bushing, the other was copper. And when there was something wrong with the copper bushing, you tore them both out, pushed them both out, and replaced them, which was pretty expensive. I made a suggestion that if the nickel bushing was all right, the one that was expensive, $30-some,
Wow.
leave that alone, make us a pilot for the machine to fit that, and just replace the copper bushing, which was a few dollars. And they bought it, and that's the way I got my $1,000 award.
Did you have to machine those bushings?
Yeah.
You had to machine those.
Yeah, and they used to machine together. But after I made a suggestion, it left just one tool out and just run it through the other one.
How much did that rod weigh? Was that a heavy thing?
That'd be maybe 2 pounds altogether.
It looked as though it was machined all over. It didn't have like a car engine rod with a forged web or something.
Yeah. The middle of it wasn't machined.
Oh, it was not?
No.
Okay.
Just the outside and the edges. But the middle of it was just rough forging.
Where was the breech ring thing that you mentioned?
That was in building 34.
Was that a big gun?
Oh yeah, 75 millimeter.
75. Was most of that machining with small machines, single purpose machines?
Yeah.
Do you remember who any of the bosses were that you worked with down
Del
there?
McRae,
Del McRae, but
Louis Church.
Louis Church.
He was superintendent, general superintendent, I guess. And Del was the general foreman, and I was just an hourly man then.
Yeah.
And I got to be a foreman and with the rod deal.
Yeah. When you became foreman, Bob, did they have training programs and those kinds of things in those days for foremen, or how
No,
did they do
not
that?
very much. Not very much. I took some of my own training. I went to night school
All
for
right.
2 or 3 years.
Uh-huh.
Different things. One of them was machining, which I used to go out to the Bad Boys Club out there, by East Lansing, or out there by Eastern Juvenile, what they
Yeah.
call it, juvenile home.
Yeah. Vocational, it wasn't vocational. I remember what you meant anyway, yeah.
And we went out there at night for machine work.
What was, during the war, what was the feeling in the plant? How did people feel about the war? Do you remember any?
Well, I didn't like it. And I said never go. And I didn't. But Ray Brown was worked personnel then. He called me over one day and he said, Bob, he said, got a call for you to come down to the registration office. You're going to be taken into the Army. I said, no, I'm not. Well, he said, you either will, or he says, they'll probably put you in a jug. I said, well, I'm not going. So I went back, talked to Dell and talked to Church, and I said, we'll see what we can do. So I got what do they call
A
it?
deferment.
Deferment.
Yeah.
Because of my work, and I never did go to the Army. I sure didn't want to go.
Yeah. Did the fact that a lot of people did go, did that change the workforce?
Oh, yes.
What happened?
Well, they just hired more different people, older people.
That, how about ladies?
Oh, yeah. On that rod deal over there, I had one department over there where I had 17 women and 3 men.
Did that work all right?
Oh, yeah, but women fight a lot.
Okay.
There's always someone mad at the other ones.
Made it fun to be a foreman.
Oh, it is kind of difficult sometimes. But you couldn't just whip them with a bullwhip and expect them to do anything. You had to be nice about it. And the nicer you was, the better they was.
They could do the work all right?
Sure. Sure they could. They could do a lot of it too if they wanted to. But if they got mad at anybody, they couldn't do nothing.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Okay. Was that the first time you'd run into a fair amount of women then?
Yep. Only time.
In the 30s, did you have very many of those out in the car assembly plant where you were working?
There wasn't any, I don't think, on production.
Okay.
Might have been a few inspectors and stuff, but none on production.
Did how how did they go about getting the women trained so they could do those kinds of things?
We had to train them.
Yeah,
Sure.
because I assume most of the women had never seen a machine before.
Yeah, most of them hadn't. But I had 3 pretty good men, and I did a lot of the training myself too.
Yeah.
But they would really show them how to do it, how it was made easier and quicker, and they caught on real good.
Was the pay scale the same for the women as
Yeah.
it was for the men?
Yeah.
How about things in the plant, Bob, like signs and banners, and we see a lot of pictures of those kinds of things. How were those? What happened in the plant relative to those kinds of things?
Well, I don't know if they made much impression on people, really.
They did.
I don't believe so. I could walk right by them and pay no attention.
Yeah. How about, I also see pictures of Army brass coming to the plant. Did you see a lot of that?
We got quite a few.
Did we do anything special for those folks when they came?
Yeah. Yeah, if they'd set up a route to take them, like over in the press room, maybe.
Yeah.
And if they was going through here, when we paint the front side of the press room, the back side never got painted.
All right.
Yeah, it was a lot of that. Yeah, when they were, see, they had men in the plant all the time too, doing inspection work on the government guns and
Yeah.
like these rods and stuff. And then they'd come in to see how they was doing, and I guess to kill time mostly.
Did that cause any problems, the fact that they had inspectors and we had inspectors too?
Oh, yeah, but they got so they worked together pretty good. There's certain things on guns and stuff that had to be perfect, no matter who inspects them.
Yeah.
But they didn't have any 5 or 10 thousandths leeway. maybe 2 or 3 thousandths or something. But they was particular. Some of them was kind of dirty, nasty, but they got so we get along with them all right. Because that was pretty good business, you know.
What did they do with all of the machinery from the car production? What did they just throw it away?
You know, most of it never moved.
Oh, didn't it?
Mm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, how did they get the new machinery, like for the rod, the articulating rod installed without pulling out all the old stuff?
Well, some of it was pulled out and put in storage, but some of it wasn't either. And it was just a different setup, see? And a lot of the presses and stuff like that, some of the machinery we used on war work.
Oh, okay.
But, like over in Building 28, where this rod was made, there was some conveyors and stuff pulled out of there, but stored in the back area.
Okay.
And that didn't take up as much room as the engines did, you know. And there were some plants where the stuff was just shut down and left there. And of course, they built the new plant 3, you know, and that's where a lot of the war work went.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember in Building 36, I don't remember what was in there before the war.
Now, you mentioned after the war we had a big strike.
47, yeah.
What happened there at the plant?
Well, the union was trying to get in, and General Motors wouldn't let them in. And they was saying up people right and left. And then this sit down took off in Flint. Yeah. And of course, the local union kind of followed them, you know, and I guess, well, they finally went on strike here. But that was one thing, being on salary. We had to go in every day, but got paid our full salary for, I think it was 126 days.
What did you guys do during all that period?
Play cards.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we went to classes and stuff, school.
Yeah. Did you have to go through picket lines to get in the plant?
Oh, yeah.
So the plant was picketed all around.
Yeah. But they didn't interfere with anybody. Of course, the pickets was guys we'd worked with, you know.
Sure.
And they was doing it because the union heads told them that's what they should do. And that's the way they got the union started. And they finally got it settled after 3 months, I guess, 4 months. But we got a regular pay all that time. And I told my wife then, I said, boy, I don't care what happens. I'll stick with General Motors as long as they're in business.
Were you out in the plating plant at that time, or where were you?
Yeah,
Plating plant. Okay, now you mentioned also, Bob, that when Plant 3 started, you went over there.
Yeah.
Okay, what was going on over there when you went over?
Well, we built compressors for the jet engine, made all the blades and the flywheels and the whole business. And we had a pit over there where we tested them.
Okay.
And the first 4 or 5 we tested blew up.
They did?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And then we tested right along, never lost one. But we found out what was causing it.
Now, that was the first time we'd ever manufactured a thing like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this turbine for the jet engine was aluminum, see? And it has steel blades in it. And this aluminum thing was like a big barrel, kind of.
Yeah.
And that just blew all to pieces.
Yeah.
But we turned them in about I think 30-some thousand revolutions per minute.
And you mentioned it was in a pit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cement pit.
That so if it blew up, it didn't hurt anybody.
Uh-uh. I can tell you who that personnel director was now.
Oh, who was it?
Bill Mahoney.
Oh, okay. Bill's still alive.
Yep.
He's 90. Must be 93 or 94 now.
It must be. Yeah.
Bob, what did you do over at the jet plant? What was your area that you had?
I had the north half of the plant of the jet engine.
Right.
The blades and the discs were made in the south end.
All right.
And then the north end, we assembled the blades to the flywheels and machined the body of the jet engine.
Now the whole plant was used for making jet engines, both
Yep.
buildings?
Yep.
Okay. The plating plant was not there
No,
at that time.
so we went for more work in the plating plant.
Where was the this big pit you mentioned? Was that up at the north end then too?
Yeah, it was about in the middle of 301.
Okay.
It was just about in the middle.
Do you remember how many people or it took to run that plant, or how many people did you have working with you, for example?
Well, on all shifts, probably 250, 300.
Were you working 3 shifts?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what kinds of problems you were having with making that engine part that would be typical for the day?
Well, we had a lot of things to learn about it because nobody had built them. That was the right engine, a new design, and we had a contract to build them, and Packard Motor Company had a contract,
All right.
but they hadn't done anything, so they couldn't tell us nothing.
Uh-huh.
And we'd learned things as we went along. But that thing, the speed it run, it had to be perfect. You couldn't have any off balance at all, but it tear itself to pieces. And that was kind of tricky business.
You must have had balancers to balance.
Oh,
the
yeah.
engines.
Oh, yeah.
You remember how you put the whole thing together? How the assembly was made?
No, no, not really. It was pressed together, but I don't remember just what sequence.
Did you assemble the blades also to the disc?
Yeah.
Okay. What held the blades in the disc? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
All right.
They was pressed in, but I don't remember
Pressed
what.
into the disc.
It wasn't screwed in or anything. I don't know how it was, what held them in.
All right. See, did you go over as the plant was being set up or after?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
The plant faces west. Why is that?
It does?
Well, I mean, the front door was.
Oh. Well, I don't know, because they had lots of room to put it there, I guess.
Okay.
Well, the front was parking lot for the hourly people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why, but that's probably a good place for it, really.
Who was the boss of the plant? Do you remember?
Down McRae.
Dell had that plant. Okay.
Yeah. And I worked for him about 22 years. And when he retired, I took his job. Worked for Bob Dallas.
Did you stay there then, Bob, at Plant 3 during all that period of time?
Well, after a while, then I had half the main plant too.
Okay. That was after the jet plant left?
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. But in the main plant, When I took over some of that, I had the press plant, everything but the motor plant, the paint plant, and the assembly line. I had everything else.
Okay. So you had the press and the plating and the axle plant, that kind of stuff.
And plant 304 and 5, about 1,500 people, I guess.
All right. What did you, between the time the jet plant left, we eventually got into regular car production. What kinds of things happened after the jet plant left?
Well, that machinery was government machinery, and that was moved right out to them. We started moving machinery in for axles and connecting rods and
Okay.
press plant, plating plant. It was just, we're still building some jet stuff, but we was getting ready to build other stuff. So it was kind of a mixed up mess for quite a while.
Okay. That's when the new plating plant came in
Yeah.
over there?
But it was the way they were scheduling then, my main plant couldn't handle it.
Okay.
And we didn't figure anybody else could make bumpers as good as we did,
Yeah.
so they made us a big plating plant. Now they don't have any chrome bumpers, so they
Not at
don't need
all.
it.
It's all gone. Yeah, it's all gone. Do you remember what kinds of things happened as you installed that new plant? Was that kind of a problem thing, the new plating plant?
Yes, it was. Ask her, she won the machines.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I never worked so many 15, 18-hour days of my life as I did when I was trying to start that thing. I spent 12, 15 hours on the second deck or the plating
Yeah.
when he was trying to get the conveyors and stuff to work. Never saw all the conveyors run at one time for 15 hours.
What was the basic problem with that?
Well, it was all new electronic stuff and run by the office over the plating plant over in the second floor. Electricians had to run it, and just stuff wasn't coordinated, I guess. I don't know. I didn't know that much about electricity, but
Yeah.
I know they had to do it or it wouldn't run. And that was the first massive conveyor system around, and
Yeah. Yeah.
we had to make it work.
Were you a party to why they put that kind of system in at the time they were engineering it, or did they just kind of drop it on you?
Well, I guess we was in on some of the meetings about it, but hell, we was in no position to tell them how to engineer it.
Yeah.
That's what we had the engineers for. Don't you know that?
Yeah. You're supposed to know.
No, it was getting that thing started was a big job. And then once in a while, somebody punched the wrong button or something, and we'd drop 18 of them in the acid tank or something.
Oh my goodness. It's scary. Then how would you get them out?
Piece by piece.
Fishing?
Yeah.
With a big hook?
Oh, yeah, some of them. But when a rack full of them went down, like pictures you got there, some of them,
Yeah.
that's quite a mess.
So you had the stamping plant there too at that time,
Mhm.
for making the bumper. That
Yeah.
was part of the original installation?
Yeah. Yeah, they went up in there. From there, I went to polish department.
What about other kinds of things that you mentioned you made axles in the plant? And
Connector rods,
rod, okay,
front spindles.
okay. Any other press kinds of things prior to the new press plant across the driveway? Were you stamping other things there in the plant?
Yeah. Small parts.
Remember what kinds of things?
Yeah. No, not really.
Did you have in the plant, Bob, any personnel people, labor relations, those kinds of guys
Yeah.
in the plant with
Yeah.
you?
Cutler was over there for a long
Oh,
time.
was he?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we had them there. We had our own first aid station and product engineers. Yeah, we had a regular setup over there. Nice setup. Nice new plants, you know.
Yeah.
And then when the crankshaft went out, the main plant, they moved that over there to plant 3 too.
Okay. Then you mentioned as time wore on, they added the new building out to the west there.
304 and then 305. And that was a lot of the presses and stuff that covered the main plant.
All right.
And some new ones too.
Now, at that time, did you still have plant one, as the press plant at plant one, and the plating that was still there?
Yeah.
Okay. You remember when you became the general superintendent, Bob?
Uh, and retired for 18 years. And I was general superintendent about 11 years, I guess.
Okay. So you retired in 72?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Then do you remember who followed you? Who took your old job when you left? Is that Jed Cordes? No, I can't remember. That's our fault. In that whole period of time, Bob, that you were there, how did you see the safety in the plant change?
Oh, a lot. Stuff that we started with presses, especially. We never thought anything about it. And before I left there, boy, if you stuck your hand in the press, like I was telling you about
Yeah.
different valve covers, you was going to be in trouble. And before, they wanted to get production.
So they just people were fishing around.
Sure.
Presses.
But, yeah, oh my God, there was all kinds of changes. And of course, some of them wasn't enforced very much. I tried to enforce them, and some people didn't like it.
Were safety glasses there when you started?
Oh, no.
That was a thing that came along somewhere in there. When did you remember about when the safety glass thing started to become?
Probably not before 1960, maybe.
Okay. How about the dye, the pins and the dyes business? When did that get pretty strong?
But we started about the same time, 1955 or 60.
Oh,
But we lost a few hands, a few arms, and like any other press plant.
yeah, sure.
And some of them was way long after we enforced the rules. I remember one die maker that reached the die, and it was the die about that deep. This was the rear end covers.
Oh yeah.
And he was working on the die and didn't lock the press out. And it tripped, cut his arm off just below the elbow. Hinges ball. That was about the worst accident we ever had when I had anything to do with it.
They had die blocks, didn't they, at that
Oh,
time?
sure.
Did, in the early days, when you had one or two guys working on a press, how did they stay coordinated with each other? So they,
It's supposed to be locked out. And each guy had a key
all right,
or a lock.
yeah.
And if they didn't have it locked out, they'd never be reprimanded. But if they do it like it was supposed to be done, why, it wasn't too dangerous. But you take a big press like that and go lay down under the top part and do something on the bottom part, and it's just blocked or locked out. Well, blocked and locked out.
Yeah.
Well, you're liable to be in trouble.
Get squashed.
You bet. Yeah. All them damn presses. One reason I'm wearing this.
They didn't, the ear business didn't come in until real late then.
The last 2 or 3 years I was there, we had well, it wasn't enforced, but you could have earplugs or ear covers, and most people didn't wear them anyhow.
How about safety shoes, those kinds of things?
Well, some of them was enforced.
Did they exist in the 30s? Could you get safety shoes when you first came to work?
I don't think so. There's my last pair that I bought before I retired.
Still going. All right. Yeah, they last forever.
Yeah.
On the assembly line, when you were working in that area, did they have any kind of safety things that were apparent there in the early days?
No, not much.
Were they using air tools, Bob?
Oh yeah,
They had air tools.
yeah. Well, they had kind of a rule about cars driving so fast in the plant,
Okay.
but we didn't pay too much attention to that.
Anybody ever have an accident?
Oh yeah,
Run into somebody else? Or
yeah. When I was working over there, well, about second year I was there, I was still working down the
Yeah.
headlights. Well, I was driving cars in over at the warehouse.
Okay.
So we was driving over, and the ramp in the warehouse was a wood floor, a wood ramp.
Okay.
And when it got wet, it slipped in the devil.
Go ahead.
So we was taking them up, parking them in the lot. And John Winnick was the general foreman then. And so I pulled out with the cars. He was standing there with the warehouse door. And I started turning up to park it out in the lot where it should have been. He yelled at me, "Scott, where you going?" I said, "I'm going to park it over here." I said, "You can't get up that ramp." "Oh, hell," he said, "you can too." I said, "It's too slippery." Yeah. So I drove over there and he got in the car. He said, "Oh, back up now about 30 feet, then give her the gun and let's go up there." So we started up. We got about halfway. This right over into the railing. It was on John's side. Okay, he says, "Get it out of here." So I had to back down that railing, and I couldn't get over because I couldn't turn the front wheels. He just raked the hell out of that car. Got down, his door was jammed, he couldn't get out. So I got out, let him out. He says, "Okay, park it." Yeah,
What was the big old warehouse used for, Bob?
store cars were shipped.
They shipped out of that building?
Yeah, the railroad went right to the south side of the building.
Okay.
And a lot of them was driven away too.
Oh, were they?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
a lot of dealers would come there and get their own cars and drive them to Saginaw or Toledo, Ohio, or any place.
shipping any by truck? Did you see any truck shipping in those days?
Not very much. They didn't have any of these 12-car haulers or anything.
Yeah.
I suppose they had some that held 2 or 3, maybe,
Yeah.
or something. I don't remember.
See, do you remember anything about safety in the plating plant? in the early days versus later on?
Well, there wasn't very much early, and probably wasn't enough later.
Okay,
But well, you had to wear safety glasses.
yeah,
Some jobs you had to wear goggles,
all right.
and there were some places where you had to wear safety shoes. But I don't think that was really ever enforced, really.
Yeah,
If a guy smashed a toe, then he'd wear them. Then
Yeah. yeah. Learned the hard way.
yeah,
How about rubber suits or those kinds of things?
no, we had rubber aprons if you needed one. You
All
could
right.
have it or didn't have to, but it saved your clothes. But oh, it had pretty good ventilation. Sometimes it didn't take all the fumes and odors out, but that was a big outfit to ventilate.
Did the one over in 78 when you were over there prior to the war, did that have ventilation on it in those days?
Kinda.
Right.
Yeah.
See, was Fisher Body still there when you came or had it left?
No, it was still there.
It was still there.
Yeah.
Do you remember what part of the plant the Fisher plant was in?
Yeah, it was in the north side of 78. 77, I guess it was. They called it.
All
I
right.
believe 77. It's currently on the north side,
All right.
north of the plating and north of the wheel room and
All right.
north of the axle plant.
They improved all the body work right there.
Mhm. I think that left about, see. Well, I believe they started up the Fisher plant after the war, didn't they?
Well, I think it happened in the middle 30s someplace. That's why I was curious to know if it was there when you were starting.
It was there about a year or maybe part of it there for a year or two. I don't know.
Because the old Durant plant went out of business in 32 or 33, and I think we bought it in 35. So it would have been shortly thereafter, a year or two, I would think that they would have moved over there.
Well, I think there was a model or two, or maybe the second year part of it was done there when I first came over there. But it wasn't there too long.
Did they do stamping for Fisher body parts, or was that?
I don't know. I don't know. There was no stamping right there.
Stamping in that area?
I don't remember what all they did there, really.
Did you ever get into their body shop at all?
I may have walked through it, I don't know. But,
Nothing that impressed you anyway.
well, I had business to take care of where I was.
Bob, in all those years, who do you suppose was the best boss you ever had?
Bob Rallis.
Why?
Well, he understood things, I think. He wasn't so headstrong as some of them. Del McRae was an awful good boss, too. But Bob wasn't one of these guys says, "Oh my God, do it." But can we get this done? And that makes a hell of a difference. I remember once, I can't think who his boss was over there. Do you remember who the boss was from Rallis from over there?
Was that Wolfram? Are you thinking of the general manager?
Yeah, I guess maybe.
Either Wolfram or Skinner. I don't know which one you might be thinking of.
Well, anyway, his supervisor was in a meeting one day, and Canada was building some of our cars,
Oh,
and they was building a 6-cylinder, and we was furnishing them bumpers, number 419034, and this was a Wednesday, I guess, the regular meeting,
oh yeah.
and so I don't know who said it, but said that they had to have 1,600 of them shipped to Canada by Saturday. And so Bob turned to me, he says, "Can we have them?" I said, "Yep, we'll have them." And Wolfram, I guess it was Wolfram. He said, "Well," he says, "is that all you're going to do about it?" He said, "All I have to do is ask Scott." He says, "Yes," he says, "he'll have them. Don't worry about it." He said, "We'll have them." We did. Uh, well, it was a great life.
Did you see any changes in what I'll call management style over all those years that you were there?
Well, not really, not anything severe, not like it has been the last 10 years.
Yeah.
From what I hear, it isn't just like it used to be.
No, it's not.
But no, I don't think there was any severe changes. Top management, I guess, or down in Detroit made some changes because I used to go down there with Alice once in a while, and he says, "We might as well waste our time go up 14th floor," because he says, "They don't know anything, they can't find out anything." But I'll tell you, some of them guys that's supposed to know how didn't know which end of a plant was a plague plant, I don't think. They thought they was making an impression, but they wasn't.
Any interesting happenings you can remember that might be worth sharing?
Nothing very important, I guess. I think of probably was things at the time, but
Yeah,
if there was good things, well, you forget them. If they're bad things, you don't forget them.
true. It's true. How was when you were first as a foreman and then as a general foreman, Bob, how did you get communicated with from your boss on how things, what needed to be done?
With which boss now?
Well, when you were a foreman, how did your general foreman tell you what needed to be done, production and those kinds of things? Did you
Oh,
have meetings or?
we had schedules. Sure, we had meetings too, but we had schedules we had to live up to.
Did that, over the years, did how we talked with foremen change then as you became general superintendent?
It had to be carried down to the chain, you know. If we got a report that we had to build 870 of these a day this month we tried to build that many. If we didn't, we had to place some overtime. And of course, you had to get permission to work the overtime, you know.
Yeah.
But I had an awful good bunch of guys working for me, I'll tell you.
Did the emphasis change at all over the years? Quantity, quality, those kinds of things?
Well, quality, as far as quality is concerned, we always tried to make them better. And we didn't always make them better, but we tried.
Yeah.
And quantities, of course, they were improved and enlarged because we had machinery that would do it faster. But that's like in a main press plant, we could probably make enough bumpers for 25 or 30 an hour.
Mhm.
And when we got the big plant over there, along with the little plant, we could build 90 an hour. And I think the equipment made the improvements. It wasn't the people necessarily, but they had to know how to work with them. But if we have a machine that'll make 20 an hour rather than 10, why, all you have to do is keep it running.
Yeah. What was your number one headache?
Absenteeism.
We do anything to try other approaches on absenteeism to improve that over the years?
Well, nothing only threaten them. And some of them got time off for it.
Okay.
But the women's the worst absentees.
They were?
Oh, yeah. Of course, you know, they come out of a family where they're raising a family, come in there to work, and if something happens to home, why, they just feel that they've got to be there, which they do. They haven't got anybody to take care of them, why, they do. But when this is my second wife, by the way, since she's
of 10109 Burgundy Boulevard, Dimondale, Michigan. The recording was made on October 8, 1990 by Jim Walkinshaw of the Oldsmobile History Center at Bob's home. This is tape number 2 of 2 tapes.
Yeah, you were talking about your wife.
yeah, well, she worked for this other girl did, and I think maybe in 5 years she might have had 5 perfect days or perfect weeks.
Oh,
And she could always find something to be off for.
is that the kind of person you call the see, they were professional, almost hypochondriacs.
I guess.
They would get sick over everything.
Yep. Yeah. No, employee like that just isn't worth anything.
Yeah.
Because you always got to be replacing them, and you don't always have an experienced replacement.
Yeah.
And it's hard business.
Now, on a person like that, what did the company do to try and get that person more in tune to coming back?
Well, first you threaten them, then you give them a warning, then you give them a written reprimand. Then you might give them a reprimand with a week off, or you might give them up to 30 days off. And when it gets that bad, then they'll work a little bit for a while, you know. And some of them won't. Some of them finally get fired, but it's an awful job to fire anybody for that. Because it's like taking somebody to court, you know.
Yeah.
They always dig up something that's you're wrong. And they get by with it. But this gal, she didn't have any sympathy to the committeemen or anything else. In fact, most of them wouldn't even talk to her.
Really?
Uh,
They knew too that it was.
oh, yes, yes. And they get tired of
Sure.
trying to argue for her.
Now, in the 30s, Bob, when you first came, if a guy wanted to, how did you, could the foreman on the line fire a guy
Oh, yeah.
if he didn't like what you were doing, so to
Yeah.
speak?
Yeah. You could fire him, but he might go over to personnel and they put him over to the press plant or someplace instead of playing
Okay.
plant.
All right. So they
Give
try
him
and
another
fight.
chance.
Give him another chance.
Yeah, Mahoney was like that. If he thought a guy was all right, well, he'd stick up for him. And if he thought he was no damn good, boy, he'd get the hell out. But he was good at that.
Labor relations over all that period of time, how did you see that change?
Oh, just absolutely 100% different.
Was it?
Oh, yes.
What did it? How was it? And how did it change to?
Well, at first it wasn't any labor relations. And it just gradually grew and grew and grew. And it was part of the management, really. which is all right because hourly can't run alone and salary can't run alone. They got to work together. That's what I always tried to do. But even when I had 4 or 5 plants before I retired, I tried to see every plant every day. And I'd see all the supervisors. I'd see if I go in the morning early, I might go in there again in the afternoon when the afternoon shift was on. If we had midnight shift, a lot of times I'd go in at 6:30 in the morning to see them before they left. And that don't hurt anything.
Did Rolla stop out in the plant on a
Oh
regular
yeah,
basis?
quite often, quite often. More than anybody that ever had that job before. Of course, Rallis and McRae and I grew up together over there, really.
Yeah. Did you ever see the general manager out in the plant?
Occasionally. But we had like a new press line or something, he might come out once to see it. He didn't know anything about it anyhow, so. Skinner used to come out in the plant more than anybody else, I guess.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Had you seen him on a sort of a regular basis? Would you see him?
Well, not regular, but I've seen him. And he was one of these guys, if we had a golf outing or something, he might come and he'd go right along with the whole bunch, you know. Walk up work and get a beer.
Sort of one of the guys.
Yeah. Yeah, he was real good at it. And that don't hurt the relationship, eh?
Yeah.
No, I'm just very, very glad I went to work there. Because everything I've got, they got me.
Yeah. Good place. Really is.
Yeah.
Well, what have I forgot to ask you about? I'm sure there's a million things. Tell me about Dale Carnegie. What was that?
Oh, I think that's real good for anybody.
What kind of a program? How did they do that in the plant? What did they ask everybody to do it, or what was it?
Oh, yeah. I remember the first time we got together, they said, now we're going to have everybody introduce themselves. And we want you all to remember what their names are.
Okay.
And like 30 people, you know. And so we all introduced ourselves. And Rex Carter remembered more than anybody else there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Did anybody remember all 30 of them?
Oh, no.
My God, I can't believe they would.
Nobody remembered 20 of them. Or 10, maybe. I think Carter only remembered like 5. But, well, that was good. And
Were people requested to do that, or just or encouraged, or what was it?
they was encouraged, yeah. They didn't have to. And you could ask to be in it. But most of them was just, they said it was available and give us pamphlets how good it was. And I remember one of the first things, guy on the front row there in that picture, Weaver. I don't know what his first name was now, but he was one of the instructors. And he says, there's one thing, he says, you guys don't forget. The word that most people like the most is their first name. And boy, that's true.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Just like today, I'll be over to Myers or someplace, walk down the aisle, somebody will walk up. You're Bob, aren't you? Bob Scott? I said, yeah. I said, I don't remember you. Well, he says, I'm Bill Harrington. He says, remember I worked for you, let's see. Oh, it must have been about 1948. I said, sure, I remember all about it. Well, he said, I haven't forgot it. He said, if it hadn't been for you that time, he said, I'd have been fired. Oh, I said, well, I'm glad I helped you out. But I have that happen to me all the time. Of course, hell, everybody knew who Bob Scott was over there, you know.
Even though you might not know all the
Oh,
guys that
no.
worked with you.
Well, how could I remember 1,500 people? But doesn't matter. The guy, in fact, he's general foreman, unless he's retired now. He may be retired. But he worked on the press line out there in the big bumper presses. And he was a playboy, you know, always cutting up for something. And so I'd had him in and talked to him about 3 times, and I was superintendent then. And I just walked through the door into the press room, and he threw a big snowball at a guy that was working on the die, and missed the guy, went in the die. And I went over to him, and I says, look, I just one more goddamn thing like that. The guy was about twice as tall as I was. I was backing him right down the aisle. I says, you're going to be fired for good. He'd been laid off 2 weeks. And I said, don't ever do like that again. And he told me here, oh, probably 6, 8 years ago, quite a while after I retired. He stopped me one day and he said, Bob, he said, I got to thank you. I said, for what? He said, if it hadn't been for you, he said, I'd either got somebody hurt or hurt myself or I got fired. And I said, he said, that day after you talked to me, he said, I remember that ever since. And he said, I haven't done anything like that since. He said, now look at me. He said, I'm a general foreman where I could have been out in the...
So it sunk in,
Yeah.
apparently.
Yep. But, oh, it makes you feel kind of good to have some guy come up and say, boy, what you did for me was wonderful. Just like an old guy, I believe he was 64 years old. He was a sweeper for us over there in Plain Plant. I won't tell you who the foreman, the general foreman was, but he wanted to go back to Germany to see his relations. And he'd been over here like 50 years and had never seen most of them. And one of them, or a couple of them, had told him they'd buy his plane tickets over there and back so he'd go and make a visit. And he'd sure like to go. And the foreman, general foreman, told him, no way can you go. We can't get along without you. And I think he was going to go for 2 weeks. And so I don't know how long he talked to these guys or argued with them about Bryan, whether he even argued or not. But one day the committee man come in. He said, Bob, he said, I need a little help. I said, you're asking me for help? Well, he says, you've helped me before. He says, I try to help you when I can. Well, he says, what's your problem? Well, he says, Bill out there is the best sweeper you got. And he said, I don't think he's ever had a day off since he worked here. And he said he's got a chance to go to Germany to see his relations over there that he hasn't seen for 50 years. He's got a paid vacation to go. But your foreman, the general foreman, says he can't go. Well, I says, you just go over and tell Bill to go over and talk to him. So he went over and got Bill, and they come back. And I asked him all about it. Yeah. He said he was offered a free trip. I don't know what he said, his nephews or something. If he'd come over, go over there and see him. And he said, I haven't never been back over there to come over here. And he says, some of them's been over here, but they went back. And he said, I'd sure like to see him before I curl up and die. Well, I says, you just go ahead and make your plans. You can go. So he went back to work feeling real good. And so I called the general foreman, the foreman, and I said, no, I said, Bill's going to go to Germany the 22nd or whenever it was for 2 weeks. So I says, you can make arrangements to replace him while he's gone. Well, good God, how are we going to replace him? I said, that's your problem. If you need help, I'll help you. But if you can't handle it, I'll handle it for you. That's the last I ever heard of it. And I'll tell you, they didn't like me for a while.
Kind of odd, isn't it? How people.
Well, God damn it, there's human nature things that should be taken care of instead of told them they can't do it. But that did that guy a lot of good. He come back over and he'd have kissed me beside Jared, I think. He had the best time, and he seen a lot of people he'd never seen, the younger ones and stuff. Just had a wonderful time. Said the only thing that was wrong with it was only about half long enough.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's nice. It's a good trip. Good thing to do for an employee.
Well, that don't only help that guy. It makes a lot of other people feel different towards you too.
Because they hear the story.
Sure.
Yeah.
And a story like that gets traveled around
You
pretty
bet.
good. Yes, sir.
Well, think of anything else, Bob? Don't want to stop prematurely, but don't want to overstay my welcome either. So,
I suppose after you go, I'll think of something.
well, that usually happens.
But my memory's getting so bad, my God.
Well, I think you did a good job.
Can't hardly remember my own name. Yeah,
Nice remembrance.
that kind of wore into me, I think.
Of course, you were there. See, how many years were you there then?
38 years and 9 months.
30 years. That's a long time. So a
Yeah.
lot of things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I was always going to work plus 65. Of course, then you couldn't get a very good pension without being there till 65.
Yeah.
And so one year they come through, well, when they're 62, and telling everybody what bonus they get by retiring, you know. And I had to get the papers for assistants and general foreman. And my God, some of the figures that come back for assistant superintendents and superintendents was pretty as much as I'd make it. So I called her one day and I told, I don't know who it was, whoever was taking care of the retirees over there. And I says, hey, I said, will you figure right out and see what I can get? Oh, well, sure, Bob. So he sent it over to me about the next day, and I looked at it and I said, Jesus, $7,500 bonus for retirement.
You're working for a nickel an hour.
Dollar and something an hour. I went home that night and told my wife, I said, well, I said, get ready. I said, the 1st of April, I'm going to retire. Ah, she says, you're not going to retire until you're 65. I said, you watch me.
Yeah.
I said, I can't work for $1.50 an hour. If I want to do that, I'll stay at home and bag groceries for Kroger's or something. But I said, not that I don't like my job. I always have liked it and still do, but I can't afford to work. And I'm sure glad I got out when I did. Now my boy, he said, Dad, he says, as soon as I can, I'm going to retire. Why? I says, he's only 50, you know. I says, what's your hurry? Well, he says, you just got it too damned easy. Yeah, I said, after 39 years of work, I got it easy.
That's great, Bob. Shall I shut her off?
I guess that's all I can tell you right now.
The one thing I'll have to sign a little page here and then I'll quit.